I've made a few videos on the channel talking about how I use a Zone 2 setup between my theater and my living room for sharing devices optimally and efficiently. And I wanted to update some of the concepts about why you may or may not want to consider using a Zone 2 and update on how I'm using it actually right now. So from the prior videos, I have actually pulled back on my Zone 2 setup a bit. I had been running all of my sources, Apple TV, Kaleidescape, game consoles, and everything in a pure Zone 2 setup. But I've kind of pulled my system now back into what I would call a hybrid Zone 2, meaning I have some sources that I go source direct into the display device in a given zone, but I have other devices that I am still kind of optimally switching and sharing through that Zone 2 setup. And I've got reasons why I have stuff directly connected and reasons why I have stuff going through the Zone 2. I wanted to break those down and give some more food for thought about maybe why you would want to consider or not consider using such a setup. So just to set the background, I have of course a 7.2.4 projection-based dedicated theater space, and I have a 2.2 audio living room AV setup currently with an 83-inch LG G2 television, and we go back and forth between the spaces. We tend to use the theater room more so for movies than anything else, but sometimes high fidelity TV shows, sometimes gaming, and then the living room for more TV watching, generally more of the gaming, rarely some movies, documentaries, that sort of stuff. And so it's nice to have the flexibility to share some sources between them. But let's go through the whys and why nots of Zone 2 and why a hybrid setup actually might be the ideal and is working pretty good for me right now. Some reasons why you would want to eschew or skip the Zone 2 setup and instead make sure that you're directly connecting to your display device. And the number one reason is based on like connection requirements, essentially. Not all receivers, processors, and all of that are switching HDMI 2.1 very well or at all right now. My AVM70, which is my Zone 2 brain here in the setup, has not yet had its HDMI 2.1 upgrade. I believe it's coming soon, and the new Anthem models are being announced right now that will ship natively with the 2.1 boards. But I have a PlayStation, I have an Xbox, I have a PC with a RTX 3090 Ti. And I want to take advantage of things like 4K 120 on the PC, which has enough horsepower to run very, very many games, up at those frame rates. Or if it can't quite hit the full 120, it can get close to it, in which case I specifically want to take advantage of variable refresh rate. And so if I put that PC through the AVM right now, it's not HDMI 2.1, it can't support that bandwidth, it can't support VRR. The LG G2 TV does support G-Sync, which the NVIDIA video card, of course, has as well. So maybe even after the Anthem gets its HDMI 2.1, it might do HDMI VRR, but maybe it doesn't do G-Sync. So essentially, this reason boils down to if there's certain technical capabilities or features of the connection that you're looking to take advantage of and maximize from your source device to your display device, then you obviously can't switch it, and Zone 2 breaks down. You need to have those devices directly connected in, and that's just the way it goes in that case. The second reason, and this is the reason why I actually put my Apple TV back up in the living room, is I found that with an Apple TV directly connected to the LG G2, I can have iTunes movies and Disney Plus and HBO Max and Netflix. They'll lock onto the fact that they can pass the more lossier encoded Dolby Atmos sound to the TV, which it will then down mix essentially to 2-channel PCM and pass along to my processor for the living room. Whereas when I had that Apple TV going through the AVM70, Zone 2 switched up to the living room, because the Zone 2 specifically reports as only a 2-channel sync, you would only get the 2-channel audio streams out of the Apple TV and the various apps and all that. And this is pretty technical, and I'll probably do a dedicated video really breaking down the idea, but suffice to say, having the Apple TV and all of the disparate apps sending the Atmos signal, even though it's not technically an Atmos zone, still makes for higher bitrate, higher quality audio stream than if they were streaming to you just the 2-channel stereo signal. So the LG is awesome in this regard. I couldn't make the same thing work in that way with my Sony, but the LG TV does. And I want to take advantage. I've got all this great equipment, some pretty expensive 2.2 setup even in my living room, and I want higher bitrate audio, of course, if I can get it, regardless of it being Atmos or not Atmos. So that's a big plus and a big reason why essentially I'm running the Apple TV in the living room directly connected to the LG versus having it down in the rack and switching it through the Zone setup. And I do maintain 2 Apple TVs anyway, one dedicated for the theater, one dedicated for the living room. That's the one source that I don't have a single one of, kind of, that I would switch between the 2 zones. And then the third reason why you may not want to actually have a source go through a zone setup is, at least in my case, and I would imagine for very many, if you're having a main zone that's a secondary room or a home theater that you have your sources and then you're using that as your Zone 2 brain, that's probably removed from your actual living room space or whatever space would be the actual Zone 2 space. When you have something like a Nintendo Switch, for example, which I now have sitting in my living room, and that device is in a dock removed in the basement here with my rack in the storage room, it's not in the living room. So if somebody wanted to, they couldn't just grab it off the dock and play it, whereas having that device directly connected to the TV fundamentally puts it in the room, and it's now more kind of directly accessible. And this might matter as well too for things like video game consoles, perhaps, if you get good controller reception from the wireless controller in the room to the device, by the TV or behind the TV or in a console underneath it, but you don't get good controller reception if you have the same console moved away, further away with your rack in your basement. And so that the controller accessibility might break the whole concept of a Zone 2 setup down and force you to put the device in the room with your display device, in that other zone to begin with. So that's basically why those 3 devices, right, the PC, the Apple TV, and the Switch, I took off of the Zone 2 structure, and all 3 of those things are directly going into the LG, which left me with one other HDMI port, which is my Zone 2 input, and there are some devices that I am still switching in this hybrid mode via the Zone 2. So let's talk about the reasons why I still have those devices connected in that way. And there's really kind of 2 of them, I would say. Number 1 is the savings. So one of the really great benefits of having a Zone 2 setup is you're not buying multiple sources for different locations. And I have a Kaleidescape system in my home theater. I have a Strato C, and I have a 12 terabyte compact Terra movie server. That's expensive stuff. As it is right now, I believe buying a standalone second Strato C to be able to access the Kaleidescape in the living room, play it natively to the LG TV is on the order of $4,000. But for literally no extra money, or maybe I think I spent maybe $100 on a secondary HDMI cable to run between the zones, so I could have the PC directly connected and the zone sources, switched and directly connected to the TV. I can access my Kaleidescape in the living room. No second Strato, no extra $4,000 player. I would probably very likely never buy that second Strato. I honestly, I would very rarely, in general, use the Kaleidescape in the living room anyway. For me, it's really a home theater source device. But I like having access to it up there. If I really wanted to, I could play a movie on it. It's useful for making content because I'll do screen recordings and other things of the K, and a lot of times that's easier to do in the living room than in the theater. So I've got a variety of reasons why I might want to be able to pull that device up and interact with it. And actually, the Kaleidescape works beautifully in the Zone setup, and saving again on the order of $4,000 to be able to have access to it, and that's awesome. And that goes for any source that you would use. If you run your PlayStation 5, your Xbox, whatever it might be, it's $500 a pop to put one of those in each zone. If you want to add extra, storage to a game console, you're paying $100, $200, $300, maybe depending on the size of the SSD you're putting in. So if you've got multiple consoles and multiple zones with multiple storage expansions, the cost starts to tally up, and Zone 2 wipes all of that away. Buy it all once, use it in the multiple locations, as long as that works and you don't need to have discrete, simultaneous access doing different things. And Zone 2 can save you a lot of money in that regard, and obviously I think one of the main reasons to consider doing it. And then the other benefit of the Zone 2 setup really relates a little bit more to kind of console gaming and video gaming, with the fact that consoles today, they support these quick resume modes. You can be playing a game, need to go, need to stop, no problem. Go back to the dashboard, shut it off, shut it down, come back, later in the day, come back the next day, a couple days later, pick up your controller, turn the console on, and literally jump right back into the game where you left off. But if you're playing games between zones and you have a PlayStation in each zone or you have an Xbox in each zone, you're not really taking advantage of that next, new generation, current generation quick resume feature, because as you move from one zone to the other, the game essentially has to fully boot. Your save state and information needs to kind of sync across, generally like through a cloud sync, re-up and rerun kind of everything from scratch. And so you don't have the advantage of that just super easy in and out. So if you have a console, though, in a Zone 2 kind of distribution setup, you have one console. And regardless of whether you fire up access to that console in your main zone or your secondary zone, it's the same console. It's going to quick resume. It's going to pop you right back into your games. Super fast, super easy, efficient, and all of that. So if you're primarily playing by yourself, or the family is always playing on the one console, I think this is a tremendous way to use your stuff, do your video gaming, and really take advantage of those new generation quick resume features. So as it is, I tend to game a little bit more on the PC than the PS5 and the Xbox. So obviously by having the PS5 and the Xbox on the Zone 2 setup, at least for right now, I'm not getting 4K 120 and I'm not getting VRR out of those. Once Anthem enables that on all the ports, then I would still be able to get that bandwidth and switch those things. And so those features will come. I don't tend to use those consoles very much, and so I'd rather have the accessibility in both rooms rather than worrying about the cutting edge technical communication features and such. I really demanded those for my PC, but I didn't really feel them that necessary for the PlayStation and the Xbox. So hybrid Zone 2, I've been using it like this for a little while. I think it works great, and again, taking advantage of the major values, reasons, and justifications and benefits of why some devices belong attached to a source device and some devices could be relegated and managed quite nicely through a Zone 2 structure and switcher. Do you have a multi-zone setup? Are you taking advantage of any Zone 2 capabilities through your receiver or your processor? Post in the comments, let me know what's your structure. What are you switching? Are there certain things that you put in there? Are you not? Is the hybrid Zone 2 actually kind of the right thing for your setup? Sound off, let me know, share your stories. And otherwise, please do all the regular YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, hit the bell for notification, all of that. And go ahead and check back on some of the prior Zone 2 videos that I did do, which are kind of deep dives on the whole setup and the structure and demonstrations about how it works and switching and managing it as well through my Control4 automation system, which really makes it a snap. Thanks so much for watching, and come on back for a whole lot more home theater tech and AV fun.